This is from The World as Province. The shock of reading Beckett. I must have been in my late teens when I first read Beckett, and in my late 20s when I first taught him at University College Galway. What I recall so distinctly about both these experiences, and about the time in between, is simply the shock of reading Beckett. The inescapable, physical, untranslatable shock that someone could write like this. I could die today, if I wished, merely by making a little effort, if I could wish, if I could make one effort. But it is just as well to let myself die quietly without rushing things. Something must have changed. I will not weigh upon the balance any more, one way or the other. I shall be neutral and inert. No difficulty there. Obviously, it is the voice and the ability to get inside the meanderings, the inflections of a self thinking aloud. But there was something else about the tone of the voice with which I was familiar, in that the voices of the old men and women sounded like those uncles and aunts who called at my grandmother's house where I lived in Belfast in the 1950s, or to whom I was taken on visits as a young boy by my mother on Saturday afternoons or during school holidays such as at Easter time. They talked a lot about ill health and ailments, about people passing on, like Maddie in All That Fall, simply rattled on in fascinating cycles of cliché like Winnie in Happy Days, or had whispering conversations like May and V in Footfalls. All of these could well have taken place in the drawing rooms I remember sitting in, overhearing adult voices talking literally above my head, insistent, poignant, self-preoccupied, world-weary, vigilant. When I first read Beckett, it was therefore a shock to realise that someone had actually recorded these voices, or somewhat similar voices at any rate. Their talk of ghosts and the afterlife I had also heard in those silent, somewhat darkened rooms, and the admonition that life was not an easy path meant that Beckett's characters sounded shockingly familiar and real to me in their soliloquizing. When I read Owen O'Brien's magisterial The Beckett Country in the mid-1980s and got sight of Beckett's home territory, the proximity of mountain and bay, the railway, and most particularly the civic world and streetscapes of South County Dublin, there was more than a fleeting resemblance to the Belfast I had known growing up, certainly in the view of mountain and sea from the Black Mountain and Napoleon's Nose, but also in the curious unfolding narrative of houses and home life, the postman, the milkman, the laundryman, the blind piano tuner, the hedge cutter, the whistling window cleaner, the insurance man, all callers to the house, with those few words of unusually ritualistic greeting and farewell. While the physical scale of things may have been different, and the accents, the intimacies out of which Beckett writes, those perpetual memories of a passing life, continues to shock with recognition. When I moved to Dublin and started to get to know at first hand some of Beckett's country, the physical world as much as the cultural background, specifically the Huguenot remains, and the moral realities, it occurred to me that it was too easy to get him all wrong. The journey out of his own roots, the self-propelled, uncertain need to find some other place, a safe haven, from which to explore what had made him and where he had come from, resonated as well. Proximity for a writer is not necessarily a good thing, it seems to me, and Beckett was clearly ill at ease in the hugger-mugger of Dublin literary life in the 30s. So first London and then Paris became his vantage points, points of departure into that writer's life which seemed so easily assumed in the Dublin of his time, and yet as unwelcome, or at least uncharted, to his family's way of thinking and of seeing things. So the act of writing is unavoidably a lonely art, involving rebuke as much as invocation, loss as much as love, recollected with stringent self-consciousness in the wonderful company. The light there was then. On your back in the dark, the light there was then. Sunless, cloudless brightness. You slip away at break of day and climb to your hiding place on the hillside, a nook in the gorse. East beyond the sea, the faint shape of high mountain, 70 miles away according to your longman, for the third or fourth time in your life. The first time you told them and were derided. All you had seen was cloud. So now, hoard it in your heart with the rest. Back home at nightfall, supperless to bed, you lie in the dark and are back in that light.